everybody, it's Tony here at Talking CarBiz. Wanted to thank you for stopping by. Tonight, we're just going to touch on the initial response to what's my trade worth. And I've got my script here, so I'll share that with you as well. But before we do that, I just want to remind you the purpose of this technique is to invite the customer into the dealership if it's a phone up, or if they're on the showroom floor, to convey to the customer that we want to make sure that they get the most for their trade-in, and we have a process that can help us to ensure we do. So let's dive in. Let's take a look at the word track that I would propose that you would use maybe as your A plan. So you can see here's my script, and I've got an A plan, I've got a B plan, and I've got a C plan, and then ultimately I have a D plan. So really what I'd like to try to emphasize here is, if your plan or your strategy when the customer asks you for trade-in value, if you've only got one bullet in your gun, you're probably not going to win the gunfight. So you've got to have multiple bullets, especially when you're going up against a competitor who has two bullets. Their first bullet is, what's my trade worth? The second bullet is, I'm out of here. So you need to have at least two bullets. And in my trade script, I've got 4 bullets. So tonight, I just want to talk about the A plan. And really the principle of the A plan is to build enthusiasm, right? We want to build enthusiasm with the customer so that we sound credible when we use our word tracks. We can't be pessimistic. When they ask us a question, there's a technique or a strategy that I've used that I found to be pretty effective. And you've seen other professionals use this technique, and off the top of my head, I would say the professionals that use it the best are politicians. And I'll give you an example. First of all, I'll tell you what they do. Number one is they acknowledge the question when somebody asks them a question, a reporter or somebody like that. So they acknowledge the question. Number two is they esteem the person that's asking the question. And number three, they go on to give an answer that may or may not be related to the question. But if they're really skilled at this, the interviewer will accept their answer and move on. I've seen plenty of politicians who aren't skilled at this, and they're up against a grizzled veteran in the media, and that person just eats them alive. So you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that politician where the person in the press is asking you a question and they just chew you up and spit you out because you're not prepared. So I want to teach you how to do that. So you see in my word track, when the customer says, what's my trade worth? You always want to say, that's a great question, I'm glad you asked. Or that's a good question, I'm glad you asked. You've seen politicians do this all the time. But Mr. So-and-so, that is a really good question. In fact, I was thinking about that the other day, or I was thinking about that on the way in. And really what they're saying is they're trying to deliver the message that you're a smart guy, you asked a great question, you're thoughtful, and I respect you. Right? What is the chance that that politician was thinking about the same question as they drove over to the interview? I don't, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to answer that question confidently, and you need to be able to esteem the customer for their savvy, for their fortitude. So, boy, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Tell me about it. Meaning, tell me about your car. And you've got to get excited. You've got to be prepared to make them think that you bumped your head on the way into the office today and you're going to give them way more than they expected for their trade-in. Because if you don't, they don't need you, right? They heard this response the last dealership they called or the last dealership they stopped in. The response of, well, I can't tell you what your car's worth without seeing it. I can't give you value over the phone. You have to bring it in. Your car's not worth that much. And we try to devalue the car even before we've had a chance to talk to the customer. So, number one, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Put a smile on your face, be upbeat and positive, and then say, tell me about it. Now, you'll see I've got some bullet points here, but these are not a checklist. These are bullet points. These are ideas of things that you can ask the customer to get them engaged to show interest in their vehicle. So it's not, does it have a sunroof check? Does it have this check? Is it that check? It's not that. You're trying to get excited and build credibility and express interest in their trade-in, which, by the way, the last salesperson they called didn't build interest. He just tried to devalue it because he didn't want the customer to think it was worth more than it's worth. So, number one, did you buy it new or used? Okay, you've got to use that enthusiasm. They'll tell you new or used. If they say used, really, how long have you had it? Well, I bought it 5 years ago and it had 60,000 miles on it. Wow. So you bought it 5 years ago with 60,000 and it only has 100,000 on it now. So you really only drive less than 10,000 miles a year. What kind of work do you do or where do you work? Start to build a relationship in and around these things. How many miles does it have? What's the condition? Right? How is it equipped? Awesome. Then ask them this question. Do you have payments now on your car? I don't care how old it is, how many miles are on it, I don't care. I want to find out if this person has a balance due without asking them how much it's worth or how much they owe. So, do you have payments now on the car? If they say no, simply say to them, well, how much were they when you had them? And they might say, well, they were $300, or, well, I paid cash for my car. See, every question you ask can get multiple answers and give you plenty of information to help the customer. So, do you have any payments on the car? Yes, I do. I pay about $300 a month. Okay, great. How'd you get them so low? Well, I got a great deal. Well, I put down a lot of money. Well, I had equity in my trade. Whatever. But one thing I learned from a great trainer, you may know this person, Grant Cardone, is if I want to earn the customer's business, I need to find out how they bought their last product and improve on not only the product, but the process if I'm going to earn their business this time. So if they're paying $100 a month for cable TV and I'd like to sell them cable TV for $150 a month, I better find out what they got for the $100 a month, what the value is, and then I better trump that value. Excuse the pun. But you really do need to find out how they bought their car, how they paid for their car, without making them feel set up. Okay? Now, after you've done that, you're going to go back to the script and you're going to say, that sounds like a great car. And you've got to say that with enthusiasm. That sounds like a great car. We could really use a car like that on our lot. Now, it might be an aged, old piece of junk, but there's always a market for cars. I don't care how old, how beat up they are. But the customer wants to hear that you want their car, that you're enthusiastic about their car. Nobody wants to trade their car in to a funeral director. So you've got to be excited about that car. Okay? That sounds like a great car. We could really use your car on our lot. Here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to make an assumption. When you stop in, we'll have our used car manager take it for a spin. He's going to check it out. He'll do some research. He'll make some calls maybe to some other dealers in order to get you the most money for it. That's what you want, right? Now, that sounds like that's what you want sounds like a dumb question. but it is if you think it is. What we're trying to do here is get the customer to say yes to something, to come into agreement even with the obvious. Folks, if you can't get the customer to agree with you on that statement, you're going to have a hard time getting 30 grand out of their pocket. So you really have to start with the little yeses, the ones that if they said no to, they either weren't paying attention or they're brain dead, right? You want to get the most money for it, right? Yes. Now you've got that little yes. And they also said they want to bring it in because you just told them, here's what we'd like to do. When you stop in, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing in order to get you the most money for it. That's what you want, right? They say, right, now you need to close. Great. When would you like to do that? Today or tomorrow? All right. So this strategy, this technique takes practice. You need to know when to use it and how to use it. But if this is the first time you're hearing it, and then you run off and try to do it on a customer without practicing it, I'm here to tell you it's going to fail. I've trained dozens of salespeople and given out my word tracks and scripts to at least as many. And the only ones that have success with it are the ones that are willing to practice, role play it, do it in your own head, tap another salesperson on the shoulder and say, hey, I want to get better at talking about the trade-in. I'm working on this strategy and these word tracks that I learned from talking CarBiz. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to role play with me. Role play, role play, role play. Harrison Ford role played. Michael Jordan practice, right? Peyton Manning practice. You've got to do it. Don't practice on the customer. It's costing you money if you do. So in my next video, we're going to go on to plan B. So when I say, great, when would you like to do that? And they say, well, I live in Timbuktu plus 100 miles away, so I need a number before I drive all the way down there. In my next video, I'm going to tell you how to handle that. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch for the next video. This is going to be Plan B, Black Book, Blue Book, Edmunds.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tony with Talking CarBiz.